Hello, YouTube. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney. Honestly, I look at this video of myself right now. I look like somebody should get cracked in the face. Like somebody ought to punch me tonight. I look like I deserve it. I'm an employment attorney. On this channel, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney. We have a question here from YouTube user Philip Morningwood. I believe Philip has asked a variety of questions before. They've always been great questions, and I hope we provided adequate answers at the very least. Philip asks us, hi Vince, follow-up question. Should one put the same amount of time and energy into a position statement rebuttal, so your rebuttal to the position statement, in the EEOC process as the amount of time and energy you said need to get put into a defense to opposing the defendant's motion for summary judgment? Is the goal of the position statement rebuttal, so the rebuttal to the position statement, similar to that of a response to the defense's request for summary judgment? It is similar, but you generally don't have to argue as much law. So a rebuttal does not take as long as even an average sized or an average complexity summary judgment motion. The level of case law and specificity of fact that goes into arguing for or against, opposing or pushing for summary judgment is generally going to be significantly greater than what goes into rebuttal. Now, this is in part because you just don't have to argue the law as much. The law is a little bit more settled most of the time at the EEOC level because you have EEOC guidance on a lot of things. Excuse me. Now, I say that, but there's always an exception. So, with the rebuttal, you're not really fighting to keep your case alive, right? You're going to get that right to sue letter pretty much no matter what. That's what the EEOC does. So you're not fighting to keep your case alive. You're fighting to scare the employer into potentially making you settlement offers a lot of the time. There's definitely cases where I have said, hey, we don't want the settlement offer here. Client doesn't want it. Client wants Fed lit. Don't even bother with the rebuttal. Let's go. Fed lit. Let's pull the right to sue letter. Thanks for the position statement. Thanks for the free discovery. Thanks for letting us see your preliminary arguments, but we're not going to tip our hand for you. Let's go. That happens, and it's situational, right? Conversely, if your client's like, hey, Vince, I would like to hear what they want to talk about settlement, but these current offers don't seem like their best offers. Well, that sounds like a recipe for a really, really good rebuttal. And the reason why is because you want to use the rebuttal to scare the employer into taking action. Like you need to convince them. You need to convince them that they have a lot of risk and liability here and help their attorney, who will probably agree with you if it's a good case, to convince the employer, right? The defense attorney is going to use your rebuttal to go line by line with the employer. Probably the internal counsel at the employer, but maybe CEO, maybe somebody else, some decision maker, right? And the more ammunition you can give defense counsel to be like, we got a problem here. We got a problem here. Page 7 doesn't look good for us. The way they prove our lies in the position statement on page 8, no bueno. Not a good thing. We're not looking good. This is not going nice for us. We are not in a good position. They are going to go to Fed lit almost certainly. Like I would go to Fed lit as defense counsel. I can tell you, if I was a plaintiff's attorney, this case is getting funded. It's going to Fed lit, right? And you want to give defense counsel a lot to work with in that conversation because it's not defense counsel's money, right? Defense counsel can say, oh, I think you should settle this case. But defense counsel is not reaching into her or his own pocket and writing a little check. That's not how that works. They're saying, hey, I know you're paying me somewhere between $800 and $1,600 an hour to defend this case. But on this particular case, it's not pretty. We got to cut a check. That's going to be over and above what you're paying me. So let's get serious and make some offers. Think about that. The employer is not thrilled. The employer's like, wait. How much do we have to offer? Defense counsel might be like, well, probably like $300K. Employer's going to say, I'll give you 40. Go get it done. Defense counsel's like, that's not going to get it done. Like, trust me. I know this firm that's litigating on the other side. Like, they're not taking 40. Like, there would have to be something severely wrong with this client for them to take 40. They would have to believe this client, like, can't go on the stand. Something's wrong with the client. You know, some additional risk factor. Like, they're not going to take 40. Whatever extra juice you can give that defense counsel to get that done, it's a good choice if the client wants a settlement, right? Now, it's situational and you work backwards from what the client wants. There's also middle ground, right? Like, sometimes you slow play things. You lob a few come to reality arguments into a rebuttal and you shoot it off and see what happens. But you don't give them everything you've got, right? If you've got an affidavit from the old hiring manager that says, yeah, so they don't like it when I hire women. They used to reprimand me every time I would hire women. And their position statement is, we love hiring women. We hire women every day. We've hired 30 women since you brought your case. What does your client want? Right? Does your client want to make a splash? Does your client want to file on a public docket? Does your client want to get some press on the case? You probably don't float that affidavit out there quite yet. Maybe that affidavit makes its first appearance attached to your public filing in federal court as seen by national news media, right? I mean, there's lots of things to think about here, Philip. It's not a simple calculation. It is a case-by-case decision, and it's always going to be a question of strategy and tactics. What are we going for? What are we worried about? Right? Like, listen, there's times where you have a hard time. You see a position statement, you're like, God, that is a great argument they made. That's great. I'm not going to be able to adequately defend that argument without some discovery. So I've got very limited discovery at the EEOC level. Fine. Why would I argue it now? I'm not going to put out a bad version of my argument in the rebuttal when I think I can beat that argument pretty soundly with discovery, post-discovery here. So I'll do a truncated rebuttal. I'll argue the things I can argue that are good and strong, powerful arguments, and then I just won't argue that particular piece of the position statement in my rebuttal because, again, the rebuttal and the EEOC, they're not going to shut down your case. They can't really extinguish your case. You can still file in federal court. So there's a lot of considerations along the way. There's considerations sometimes you don't want people to know that you're going to be bringing claims against individual defendants. You don't want to forecast a divide and conquer strategy that way, right? Like, there's certain claims you can bring against individual defendants. And often those individual defendants will immediately say, oops, oh no, I'd like to tell the truth, and I'd like you to settle out with me. I would like you to not sue me individually because, I have a house and, retirement accounts, and that's very scary. Can I settle with you and, just tell the truth, and I'll give you affidavits? And you gotta, it's very touch and go. You gotta be very careful. You gotta do everything right. But, sometimes you do employ a divide and conquer strategy. Or maybe an individual who worked at the company knows an awful lot and has some liability, and you could sue that person too, right? So the rebuttal scales up and scales down in terms of complexity based on what you're doing, what you're hiding, what you're waiting for, and what your client's goals are. Which is kind of a nonsensical answer, because I basically said it depends on many things. But that's also the only answer, right? The complexity of what goes on there. And also, like, you'll have bitter arguments. So we work every case as a team of 3. The debate over what should and should not be in a rebuttal takes longer than writing it. Like, I think this is the best argument. No, I think we should make both of these arguments. No, you just want to make this one argument. This is the best argument. No, go with both the arguments. We don't have the proof for the second argument yet. We don't have this. I think you should go in. I think you go in, you pretend like you know it's true, you pretend like you can prove it today, you just don't attach the evidence. Well, that's a weak move. No, I don't think it is a weak move. I think it's a baller move. I think it's really an aggressive stance to take. I think it's going to show a lot of confidence. Right? Client decides. Different attorneys make the pitch. Like, hey, I think this should be in there. No, I don't think it should be in here. Ultimately, the client's the decider. You can come and you can say, listen, this is not a good idea. I think that this is a great idea, this or that. But the attorneys, they debate, and the client decides. So it can be a complex process. Philip, I hope this answers your question. The easy answer is no. They're not really the same level of work. They're not really the same level of complexity. Rebuttals can be really, really big jobs, but they're probably not usually going to be as big as even a medium-sized summary judgment motion. There's just a lot more time and effort that goes into a summary judgment motion than goes into a rebuttal. Remember, if this was useful, if this was helpful, like, subscribe, comment down below. Helps our channel to grow. Also, almost everybody works, but not everybody wins. So be smart out there. Take care.